Thanks to everyone for joining us, especially Gally and David, our speakers. And good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name's Andy Thompson. I'm the chair of the YAPF and an architect with Faulkner Brown's Architects. Since we've got people joining us that are perhaps new to the YAPF, we thought it would be worth a short introduction. The YAPF are based in Newcastle. It stands for the Young Architectural Practitioners Forum, and based in the northeast of England. Up until a month ago, we organised events and building tours for young professionals within the region, providing opportunities to learn, communicate and engage from one another. We're volunteer run by architects and for young architects with support from RIBA Northeast. Now though, we are, as everyone else is, adapting, taking our events online and trying to reach new people outside of the region. So we are looking to host more events in the next coming weeks in these kind of formats. So please do keep an eye out on our social media feeds for those. You can find us on Twitter at RIBA_YAPF and Instagram and LinkedIn at RIBA.YAPF. For now though, I'd like to thank you all again for attending, and I'm going to hand over to Andrea to introduce today's talk. Thank you.
Andrea, you're still on mute. You're still on mute. Andrea, can you unmute yourself?
Amy, I wonder if you might need to do it for him.
Hello. Oh, apologies about that. Thank you, Amy and Andy. Welcome, everyone. This is a communique event on behalf of the YAPF and RIBA with Guy Simons and David Schnabel. This is the story of two architects who converted a lifeboat into a home and piloted from England up to the Arctic Norway. Welcome. So I am Andrea Antonia, architect for the RIBA, Ride Architecture, and we're bringing you today something different. So let's start the event and let me introduce my guests. In February 2018, they bought a marine survival lifeboat and spent a year converting it for a 4 months journey to the Arctic, along with the dog named Shackleton. Traveling from the UK to Tromsø, the largest city in the Arctic, situated in the northern Norway. The aim of the exhibition was to design a self-sufficient boat capable of taking on a harsh environment, explore the wild and isolated Arctic landscape, and document the adventure. We'll be playing a short video just to set the scene, after which we'll be starting the conversation with Gaili and David. So Amy, if you could share the video. Brilliant, thank you. Just while that's loading, so we can't hear just yet. There we go. Thank you very much.
Stodding is a 100-person marine survival lifeboat that myself and David, another architect, bought to travel to the Arctic Circle. The idea is to use the lifeboat as a vehicle to explore the Arctic coast of northern Norway.
Over the course of the project, 2.5 years ago, it's gone from being something very small to something rather ambitious. We wanted to take something which was coming to the end of its life, its usable service life, and recycle it as much as possible.
Norway had always had this appeal to both Dave and I from a landscape perspective, particularly. The idea was that the lifeboat would enable us to explore places that we wouldn't be able to get to, and it would also enable us to take all of our equipment, all of our gear, and essentially our home with us, and be able to get out, enjoy the raw beauty of the Norwegian landscape. The project has 3 phases. It started in February 2018 when we bought the lifeboat from a Scottish ferry company. It was one of 2 lifeboats that travelled around the Western Isles of Scotland aboard a Calmac ferry called the Clansman. The lifeboat really had no future. It would have been scrapped if they could find no buyer. The lifeboat began its journey down from Scotland by lorry to the south coast of the UK, where we then spent a year converting the boat. And then in April 2019, we're going to start a 3,500 kilometre voyage to Tromsø from New Haven. The main driver behind the trip is a love of adventure and a desire to do something different and something original, but also the idea that you can do a trip like that and be self-sufficient and self-supporting and be able to go for up to a couple of weeks without really having to stop. We will produce power through our solar panels. Our composting toilet means we don't need to reach pump out facilities.
I think what's different is that we're taking a kind of vessel which is very rarely converted to this use and take it on a very long journey to climatic extremes.
It's half the size of a 1-bedroom flat, but we're trying to build 2 cabins, 2 bunk beds, a generous living area, as well as all the equipment we need to drive the boat and all the things we need once we arrive there. We've been going on some small test trips up the River Ouse through the South Downs National Park, and we're looking forward to starting to do some small trips out into the sea in the new year. After we leave New Haven in April 2019, we're going to skirt the southern coast of the UK, crossing the Channel. Then we're going to go up the Belgian and Dutch coast, eventually going through the Kiel Canal in northern Germany. That will then lead us into the Baltic, where we will travel up the coast of Denmark before crossing over to go up the coast of Sweden, eventually arriving in Oslo in southern Norway. From there, we will then go around the bottom of Norway across the Skagerrak, which will eventually lead us to Bergen, where the bulk of our journey will begin, going a couple of 1,000 kilometres up the coast of the Norwegian fjords.
We have places we've looked at on the map and we say, oh, we've seen photos of that online, it looks amazing. But the beauty or the excitement is being able to find places, see what's around the next headland. Sometimes it's the places which you don't intend to go to that you end up spending the most time at, or you find something which you weren't necessarily looking for to begin with.
Overall, this voyage should take 4 months. If we wanted to, we could really do it in a couple of weeks. But the idea is that we're going to draw out the journey, take a slow adventure all the way to Tromsø.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Gali and David, welcome to the event.
Hello.
Would you like to start by telling us where you're calling from?
Well, I'm not on the boat at the moment. I'm back in the UK, currently kind of stuck here for the foreseeable future, but obviously hoping to get back out there as soon as possible. Gali, on the other hand, is sat on the boat right now.
Hello, Gali. Gali, can you hear us?
You just need to unmute your microphone.
Just while Gali's sorting
Hello,
out his
everyone.
microphone. Oh, hello.
I'm in Tromsø in Norway, and I'm on the boat right now.
Brilliant. We're just going to go through a few questions and just try and find out a bit more about the project. So what made you do this journey? How did you get behind this?
We had both been talking about going on a trip to Norway. When we were completing our part 3, I was working abroad, Dave was working in the UK, but we kept going back to this idea of sort of a big adventure, and we were really drawn to Norway. That started as a hiking trip, then it became a car trip, and then after seeing a quite small park converted lifeboat on a river in the UK, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole online, got pretty obsessed about the potential of it as a home conversion, and nearly 3 years later, we have bought and converted a lifeboat and travelled to northern Norway together on it.
That's fantastic. And I know David wasn't so much on board at the beginning. Tell us a bit about that, David. How did you get on with the idea?
Yeah, I did take a lot of convincing, I must say. I don't know exactly why that was. Probably a combination of never having done much sailing and packing everything in to work for yourself whilst then juggling the construction of this boat. It was quite a lot to kind of take on. But it was a combination of like almost a year or so's planning before it even before we took delivery of the lifeboat, as kind of a mechanism to kind of get me through part 3, get everything kind of finished, have something to look forward to. And so, having qualified, it then allowed me to kind of focus my mind entirely on one project instead of juggling so many, as everyone here may be able to relate to when it comes to qualifying. And yeah, it was just something that I could focus on and look forward to. And I will say I wasn't totally on board until I got the phone call from Guardy saying we won the bid.
So you bought the boat online?
Yes. Yeah, it was a closed bid kind of auction process. Guy was kind of spearheading that, having done most of the kind of organisation of it up until that point. He might have a few words to say about that.
I knew that Dave needed quite a lot of convincing, and I guess with quite a lot of self-belief, I was pushing forward the project, and so when we won the bid for the boat, we paid £7,000 for it, but it was a closed bid process, as Dave said. We had emailed the ferry company with the maximum we could pay without really knowing whether or not that would be appropriate, and then I don't know, Dave likes to joke that it wasn't until we actually got to Norway that he realised this was all quite a good idea. But it was quite a big undertaking, and the whole project kind of snowballed.
I did get in. Yeah, I did.
Oh, apologies about that. Someone's just joined in. Very good. Sorry, Gailey. So, where did you get the boat from?
We bought it from Calmac Ferries. They're a ferry company running to different islands off the coast of Scotland, and they were retiring 2 of their lifeboats. They were being replaced with inflatables. There was nothing wrong with the lifeboats. They were 20 years old, but had been well maintained. We bought them in February 2018, and then, not wanting to go on a voyage straight away, we actually got them brought down from Glasgow to Newhaven near Brighton, which is where we did the conversion.
That's fantastic. So was it in Scotland? I know you guys didn't even see it before you bought it, so it was someone else that had to handle it before that, isn't it? So where did you do that conversion of the boat?
Yeah, it was a bit intimidating, spending the largest amount of money either of us had ever spent, probably, on this boat without having seen it. But there are thousands of these boats built, and they're all built to the same or similar specifications, and as I was saying, maintained. So we just had to trust in that. It wasn't really worth the cost to fly out to Scotland to see it. We did the conversion partly on in a tidal river and partly on the concrete quayside in Loughin Marine, which is in New Haven. We both quit our jobs to do the boat and started working freelance. And we worked on our. At first, we worked on our own projects during the days. Dave as a visualizer, and I was doing small residential projects. And then gradually, the lifeboat started to sort of take over all aspects of our lives, as it really became obvious that it wasn't feasible to just work on it on the evenings and weekends. And then about 6 months before we left, we really switched to doing it full time, and it was the professional work that switched to the late nights and the weekends, which sadly as architects we were all too used to.
That's fantastic. Can you tell us a bit more about the life on dock? Did you get a bit of input from the locals? Was it like quite a professional setting up, or was it just people doing their hobby boat? What was that like?
So whilst we were building it, do you mean?
Yes, just in the dock area.
I mean, it wasn't always yellow, but it kind of stood out, from the very beginning. So we had no shortage of people wanting to, have a look at it or impart any sort of wisdom that they had. A lot of people spend a lot of time down at the boatyard just tinkering on their boats. For some people, their boats are kind of projects which are very open-ended and may never actually go anywhere in particular. It's just a pastime that they enjoy doing, and actually being able to spend time with other people, kind of giving advice and kind of letting them know what we should be doing with our engine, what we should be doing under the hatches, everything that we may not have thought about originally. Especially me not being a nautical person, it was great to have the enthusiasm of other people to kind of help develop ideas and actually get them procured and finished to the standard that we were happy with.
Did you do anything about boats before, or did you do anything similar beforehand?
I hadn't personally. No, this was kind of the first of its kind. Baptism of fire, full conversion. Yeah. But luckily, these boats are maintained to such a high standard that we were confident that the boat itself was seaworthy, that it had been looked after properly. So for us, it was kind of retrofitting the interior and the exterior, but the top side. So nothing that really kind of happened under the waterline. So we were, I was quite confident that what we were doing to the boat wouldn't harm it in any way. I wasn't scared that we would find ourselves in a precarious situation later on because of something we did. It may well have been an underlying problem that caught us out, which it did. But from our point of view, we used our skills as architects, as craftsmen, builders to do as good job as we could.
And what were the biggest changes and adaptations on the boats for actually converting it?
The two biggest tasks were we chopped the back off the boat, a large section of the fiberglass out of the stern we removed to create a sunken cockpit. Neither of us had done a lot of fiberglass work before, and we had a baptism of fire by choosing to fiberglass. I think it was around 36 or 40 different shaped panels of fiberglass that all joined together at different angles. And we really made life difficult for ourselves. The other big task was the curved side windows, which have become so defining of the look of the boat and the experience of being aboard. They're curved 12mm acrylic sandwiched between two aluminium frames, and Dave took the lead on the CAD drawing and the initial design of those, and then we had quite a battle getting them to fit to the boat, which there's a plus or minus 50 mil tolerance in the fiberglass construction, so getting curves to match and prefabricated elements to fit is more difficult even than it normally is. So those were two big headaches, but two of the biggest things that have the biggest impact on our experience of using the boat, and so were sort of totally worth the headache. At least we can believe that in hindsight.
So which task did you most enjoy, or which one did you find most difficult?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, it changes every time people ask me that question, depending on what I've just looked at. I just saw the side windows on a previous photo, and I had flashbacks to trying to produce very neat 50 mil thick mastic joints to seal the windows in. And I remember being down there squeezing tubes upon tubes of Sikaflex just to try and get this sealed and watertight, and then actually then trying to make it smooth and pleasing to look at, because it was such a feature of the boat. And there are some processes which I remember being really quite frustrating and difficult at the time, but were so worthwhile having kind of labored over in hindsight. So I don't know, I don't look back on it now and think immediately that there was anything that was really my worst or best part of the construction, but there are little bits which kind of remind me every now and again.
Did you guys have like a systematic plan? Did you draw up in CAD or anything, or did you just freestyle it, reuse some of the parts in the boat?
We had we drew plans and elevations of the boat from the beginning, and as we used to sort of sit down in the evenings over a beer and talk about what we were going to do next, and sketch sections and more detailed drawings of what we did next. We didn't do sort of detailed construction drawings as we maybe would for a construction project. Part of the enjoyment was how it evolved over time, and when you started to create the spaces, actually different ideas come to you, and as you're solving problems through actually doing the work yourself, you realize there are perhaps more efficient or more elegant ways of problem solving. But we decided from the beginning that we really wanted to do all of the work ourselves, and so we were never forced to do any detailed drawings, which was, I think, quite nice actually. Feeling like it was flexible and it would evolve over time. We did do a very ambitious program for the project, which I used a template that I normally use for construction projects, and it was extremely ambitious, and we didn't keep to it in the slightest, which is perhaps quite common for architects to take on construction projects themselves.
Yeah, like I tell myself occasionally for professional work that I'll always double how long it will take me to do something before actually committing myself to anything. But I think with the boat, sometimes things would take 4 times as long as we thought, or even longer, as things just unfolded or things popped up out of the blue. You go to fix one problem with the engine, let's say, and 3 other problems arise, and it was so difficult to predict so many unknowns from the outset that we just couldn't stick to a rigid plan. And I think that would have taken a bit of the enjoyment out of it as well.
How long did you end up spending converting the boat?
A year and 3 months, I think, in total.
Wow, that's fantastic. So you were based in the dock at that time?
The boat.
We were based in the dock. The boat was that was the sort of total time we spent on the boat. During that period, we had some weeks where we weren't working on it at all, periods where our professional work was keeping us from working on the boat much, and then periods where we were down in the yard for 30 days in a row for 10 hours a day. That was particularly the approach we were taking towards the end. So both of us, we've been asked a few times whether we consider doing it again. And I think both of us say straight away, we're not sure we could do the conversion again. It was really a sort of a labor of love at the time. And we learned so much from doing it, but it was a real challenge and required sort of giving up a lot of things, be that sleep or social life or regular meals.
That's incredible. And I heard there was quite soon in your journey, there was a third passenger on the boat, Shackleton. Tell us a bit more about Shackleton.
Yeah, Shackleton is a 2.5-year-old duck tolling retriever, a water dog breed from Canada. I got him a couple of months before we bought the lifeboat. I'd been living with dogs for quite a while before we started doing the boat, and couldn't really imagine this adventure without some canine company. And look for a breed that would be a good size and good temperament for the boat, and Explorer naming him after and he was very much a key part of the crew. Kept morale up, kept the floors clean of food, and the boat was actually his home before it was either of ours, because he'd spent pretty much every day of his life aboard the boat. And when we moved aboard it, the day we left, he was already much more at home and knew where he liked to sleep and where his spots were on the boat.
Did he ever get you out of trouble at any point during your voyage?
He's quite an emotionally intelligent dog, so we often talked about the worst part being is when we were stressed by a situation, say a breakdown or some rough weather. He would get quite concerned when we were feeling stressed. He would pick up on our emotions. But also if things weren't well stowed, if something came sliding off a shelf or some things were loose, a book falling off the shelf might not disturb us too much, but for a small dog, it'd be quite a shock. So he didn't particularly like the rough weather, but 4 legs gave him quite an advantage when it came to stability, and he never seemed to get particularly seasick. So no, he's quite a good sea dog.
Well, that's fantastic. I think we all want to see the boat. So if that's all right, we'd all want to see a tour of the boat, Guiley, if that's possible.
Yeah, for sure. Do I need to do anything, or is it people can just see my camera?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
I'm gonna flip my camera around. Yeah, there we go. All right, let's go outside the boat first. There is quite a storm blowing.
So where are you docked now?
This is Scatto Marina, which is about 20 minutes north of Tromsø Harbour. The only real adaptation we made for winter was that ugly white canopy you can see on the back of the boat, which kept the worst of the snow out. You can see the big curved windows that give us such a nice view to the mountains over there, which are currently quite covered in mist. And then go up onto the boat into the stern cockpit. This then leads through to where we drive the boat from. So this is the view we would have when driving. We installed three new windscreens, which gave us a good view out. And we sit on the original hanging chair, which folds down here. And then we have the sort of navigation equipment and a small chart table and all sorts of tools. Obviously, it looks slightly different right now than it does when we're on the go.
Do you
You then
both
go
navigate
down.
the boat, or do you split the chores?
Yeah, we take it in turns. Then going down the stairs, we're in the main living space. We have these two windows on either side, a L-shaped kitchen, pretty domestic setup as it goes on boats. Then this is the seating area. The table drops to give us another double bed there when we need for guests. And then these are, we have a double cabin each with a porthole. There are some unfinished bits of lining which are on the to-do list. And then this is our wood burner, which helps keep the boat at a nice warm temperature. Right now, just due to insulation with actually no heating on, it's 14 degrees in the boat.
Wow. So what's the
Quite
temperature
nice
outside?
for Norway. It's about 2 degrees outside.
Brilliant.
We then have two bunk beds, and then our bathroom, which is currently storage. There's a toilet underneath there on the left, and a shower, but both of them are not currently in use. Yeah, and we have all sorts of storage everywhere. Storage underneath the kitchen units. We have cupboards, trying to make the most of the space. But for a boat, there's we really wanted to prioritize there being quite a lot of floor space, and that makes a really big difference, particularly now we're in harbour and living permanently on the boat. Having that floor space makes a big difference. These windows, the lower sections open, which give us some nice ventilation. They were quite a challenge, as David was saying, because not only do they need to be waterproof from above, from the rain, but also from waves and everything else. So we have these big, thick rubber gaskets between the frame and the acrylic.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think that's probably.
What David and Gary don't actually know is I've been in contact with some of your closest friends, and they jumped up the idea of trying to get you some questions and comments. And one of them was, is the internal wall lining ever going to be finished?
Yeah, very valid question. I started a full-time job about a week after we arrived in Tromsø, which wasn't really envisaged originally. So it's been quite a busy 6-7 months since we, or maybe 8 months now since we arrived in Tromsø. So it's on the to-do list, but neither of us quite know when it's going to happen now. I don't really want to take on that challenge while Dave is stuck in the UK. So maybe it's up to Corona when it's going to happen.
Of all the tasks left to do on the boat, it's probably one that we're putting off deliberately because the geometries on the inside of the boat are so complex, where the sides meet the bow, that we've got to try and bend malleable or thin cork around all these combined curved surfaces in a neat enough way that we're happy with. So although it's kind of a fairly minor part of the boat, it is something that you're going to see every day. It's the lining, the ceiling, the walls of your bedroom, and it's going to take some brain power just to figure out exactly how we're going to do it and do it well. Yeah,
definitely. So David, just to clarify, you're stuck back in the UK because you flew back for a short trip and then you couldn't fly back, or?
Yeah, so here I am in the UK, looking out on sunny weather and considerably higher temperatures than Guy's having at the moment. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm hoping to be able to get out as soon as possible, but at the moment, it's logistically it's difficult, morally it's difficult. So I'm just sticking put and working until I can get back out to enjoy the summer up in northern Norway.
So how did you guys decide to go to Norway?
seeing as we'd never been before. Is yeah, neither of us had been to Norway before. You know, we liked the idea of it, mainly because of, well, many things. You know, seafood, great landscapes, you know, and being able to combine a love of the sea. So from the sea on a boat for Guiley, and me just the coast in general, you know, being able to combine all of those things into a trip, and a long one at that, it just seemed the natural kind of place to go. We both also like colder climates, and more volatile ones. So when people have asked us, why didn't you sail south to the Mediterranean, or why didn't you go somewhere else? You know, everyone always thinks you've got to go somewhere warm on a boat. But for us, the only place we could go was somewhere colder. It allowed us to ski, and pursue the things that we kind of ourselves wanted to do, you know, come winter and this coming summer.
That's brilliant. And how was your first encounter with Norwegian land? Was it what you expected?
Well, it came after a very very violent sea crossing just south of Oslo, from Sweden. We encountered 4-meter waves, like a constant, you know, residual wave system from a storm. And you know, that was my first experience of big seas. I mean, some people think that's quite small, but for me that was quite scary. So the first time we, you know, saw Norwegian land, it was kind of it was quite a sight to behold, I guess. And then actually to get onto land, I think I just lay down and kind of just enjoyed not being, you know, like this for, you know, the past 10 hours.
Did you feel like your life was in danger at that point?
Maybe at certain points I was a little kind of worried. I was never scared for my life. You know, I had faith in the boat. The boat, we often suggest that it's, you know, unsinkable, but you know, you do have those thoughts that go through your mind, especially when you're not from a nautical background. But you know, these things are designed and engineered for exactly this purpose, and to keep people alive in much more severe situations. So realistically, yes, you might be incapacitated at sea without an engine, but realistically, you're never out of reach of, you know, help. So in hindsight, no, I wasn't ever particularly scared for my life. But yeah, I certainly got better as the journey went on.
When we were on that crossing, I was asleep in the back of the boat in the sunshine, and I got woken up by a wave crashing over the top of the wheelhouse. So it went all the way from the bow over the top of the wheelhouse and hit me in the face. And that's when I realized actually maybe the weather was a bit worse than I imagined. And I came into the wheelhouse and found Dave with white knuckles holding on to the steering wheel. And yeah, it was it was quite a challenging crossing, even having been in quite a few big seas before. The lifeboat rolls quite a lot more without a sail, and it's also not particularly fast, so you can't get away from the bad weather particularly quickly. But as Dave said, we not only were we pleased to get to Norway because it was kind of the point of the voyage, but we were both very glad to have our legs on solid land for a little bit after that.
That's fantastic. And I'd imagine you guys have to be quite self-sufficient and love adventure, and really the simple life. And it's just the two of you on the boat. How did you plan your days, or did you have a routine?
At least for me, quite a lot of the appeal was kind of getting away from a sense of routine, rather than always watching the clock or worrying about your responsibilities to other people. It was more about what the weather was doing, what the landscape around us looked like, what sort of mooring anchorage we were at, how the tides were doing. And as we got more into the voyage, particularly when we reached Norway, we really the routine became very, very simple. It wasn't governed by what time it was, or even sort of how far we had to go each day. It was more of quite a gentle routine of doing a little bit of freelance work every now and again, but fishing, moving the boat onto the next island or down to the next fjord, taking the dog for walks, and it was really quite a slow pace of life, which is actually probably the thing that I remember the most fondly about the trip, is that kind of total loss of sense of time and responsibility, and just being able to enjoy each day and whatever the day brought.
Yeah, we planned our kind of weeks in advance. You know, we had certain ports or places that we wanted to be at on a weekly basis so that we could structure people coming to visit, or just make sure that we got to northern Norway before, you know, the autumn kind of closed in. So we had points every 7 days that we wanted to reach, but everything in between those, you know, goalposts, those checkpoints almost, was up to us to, you know, decide if the weather was bad. If we had inclement weather, we would wait it out in a protected anchorage, and then make up the miles, you know, over the next couple of days. And everything was so flexible, we didn't feel like we were particularly confined or constrained by a routine. You know, we had routines week on week, but, you know, every day was kind of very different depending on the conditions, weather, what we were doing, what was available, you know, around us, whether we wanted to go camping, you know, for instance. So yeah, it was kind of rigid and not rigid at the same time.
That's brilliant. So just for everyone else on the call, you can start putting in questions in the chat. So we've got a few questions coming through. We'll just keep talking as they come through. We'll put them in. There was a question. Why didn't you wait for better weather when you left Sweden for Norway for the first time? Was that a miscalculation?
We'd actually gone into a port called Grebbestad on the in western Sweden to shelter from a storm, quite a big storm coming through, and then we waited it out, and we were watching the weather forecast, the shipping forecast, and also getting onto high points on land and having a look out over the archipelagos and trying to see the open sea and get a sense of what the sea was doing. And after 2 days waiting in port, the storm seemed to have passed, and the forecast suggested that the waves were going to be a lot smaller than they ended up being. And unfortunately, that's just kind of how it goes. We went out into the sea, and once we got out into the open water, a lot of the big swell from the storm was still there. It's quite an infamous patch of water, known for big seas and bad weather. So we always knew it was going to be a bit of a challenge, and once we got into the open water, we decided to just grin and bear it and get to the other side. And as Dave said, kind of always felt quite confident in the capabilities of the boat, even if it was still a bit nerve-wracking at points.
That's brilliant. So do you plan anything to go further north, or what's next for the boat?
It very much depends on when Dave's able to come back to Norway. We used the boat I used the boat for a first ski trip a couple of weeks ago, just before Easter. Took it out onto some nearby islands to do some skiing from the boat with a group of friends. We hope we're going to be able to do some more trips like that. The spring is really the best time of year here because you've still got a lot of snow, but you have really long days and often quite settled weather. In the summer, we're hoping we might be able to do sort of the last bit of the Norwegian coast we haven't done yet, which is further north into Finnmark, which is kind of the most isolated parts of Norway and relatively easily reachable from here. And then who knows? I think we're thinking we might start to think about the future of the boat next year, and whether we want to take on another adventure ourselves, or perhaps sell it on. It feels too capable a boat to just be sitting in a marina all the time, and so I think we'd look to find some new owners, hopefully, who'd want to take it on some adventures of their own.
Definitely. There's some more questions coming through. So there's a question coming whether there's any objectives from the trip beyond the adventure. Is there any partnering with anyone to undertake research or anything similar?
We were quite keen never to try and shoehorn the project into either being a research project or being a charitable endeavor. It was always kind of a project that we both wanted to do. But as it's developed, quite a lot of it has been about how we've documented it. Another architect who we studied with Johnny Campbell, now works as a filmmaker, and he's been documenting the conversion and the trip since the very beginning. So there should be a 40-minute documentary coming out about the boat sometime later this year. As you saw in the slideshow at the beginning, Dave took a lot of beautiful photographs over the trip, and we hope to put some of those together into a photo book. We've been doing kind of bits of writing for different magazines. So actually it became more about sort of the creative output of it in that sense, rather than there being any big sort of aim. We didn't want to try and claim like we were rowing across the Atlantic or doing a big endurance event. It was a personal project. It was a creative project. It was something we both wanted to do, and actually sharing the adventure is kind of, we've built quite a nice little community online of people who are interested in the boat, and that's actually been a really positive thing that we never really expected.
Fantastic. And just again from one of your friends, actually, they said that they can confirm that the solar panels make a pretty good non-stick dance floor. Tell us more a bit about that.
Maybe in the summer.
Yeah, they were quite icy when I last went out on the boat, so I think the people who came with me then would maybe disagree. But yeah, one of the things that was great about our solar panels that we were able to walk on them, and when we had a group of friends visiting in summer and we had some warm weather, everyone was able to sit up on deck and enjoy the views. And when the weather is bad, it's also nice being able to be inside, but have these huge windows and have such a good view to the outside, and have such good light. Makes a really big difference to the experience of being on a boat compared to many boats that have really quite small windows.
It's one I think why I don't know about Guiley, but I'm looking forward to the longer days and being able to kind of make the most of the solar panels again, because throughout the journey we were all the power that we were using on the boat came from the solar panels, recharging the batteries, whereas over winter they've been covered in snow almost perpetually. So we've actually been relying on shore power from the marina, so it'd be nice to get back to being a little bit more, so not fully self-sufficient, but at least making the power that we use to run our laptops and our phones and our fridge, so it'd be nice to actually use a boat to its full capabilities again.
And then I was just going to ask about this aspect of solitude, of the isolation. How have you found the lockdown? Is that as severe in Norway as in the UK?
No, the Norway shut its borders really quite early, which is partly why Dave ended up getting stuck in the UK. And the lockdown has been a lot less severe here. I've been going into my office since lockdown, since Corona started, and there's lots of social distancing and a lot of video calling, but it's life is relatively similar here, at least in comparison to the UK. I think it's been particularly moving to a new city. It has been hard because there's not much socializing going on, which has been a bit of an adjustment. Dave and I were quite used to being isolated last summer, but it was always a choice. It's slightly different when you're having isolation forced upon you, particularly when you're in quite a friendly, sociable city. It seems strange, but the boat is very comfortable, and I'm quite quite happy to be in Norway right now, and as it in terms of places to be when you can only kind of go outside, you can't go in bars or restaurants or anything right now. The area around Tromsø is spectacularly beautiful, so it's not too bad, and I'm quite glad to have Shackleton for company as well.
That's fantastic. How about you, Dave? Have you found the situation?
It's been encouraging some pretty unhealthy kind of work attitude. I found myself working 6-7 days a week sometimes, but you know, as the weather improves, it's kind of encouraged me to drop it a little bit. But yeah, there's a certain element of kind of feeling like I'm missing out. One of the reasons we wanted to go to Tromsø and stay there over the winter was to ski a lot, and you know, whilst I managed to get a lot of that in before the current situation, you know, because of the latitude, you know, they retain their snow, and their skiing season kind of extends well into June. So I'm kind of hoping that things kind of ease a little bit and we can continue, but you know, it's all going to be there, in the future. So I mean, I'm not too worried about getting back if it comes at the expense of anything else. So now I'm putting up now, and we'll just see how it pans out. So yeah, if there's more questions, just pop them in email or send them to Amy. So there's a few more coming through. One of them is, how do mooring fees compare to London rent?
We pay 1,200 kroner a month, which is just under £100, and then we pay for electricity on top of that. So rent in Tromsø is not that much less than London rent, being in Norway, but living on a boat is definitely a much cheaper way of living, with some disadvantages. But when you wake up in the morning, and obviously the fire hasn't been going, and we don't have a lot of electric heating, and the inside of the boat is close to zero, or and you've got to walk to the shower building and go to work. It is a bit of a struggle, but on the whole, the boat's been really comfortable, and it's been a great way of adapting to a new place, having our home with us, and being able to invite people around for dinner. It's a nice sociable place to hang out, and yeah, a cheap way of living, which makes it a lot easier to adjust to living in an extremely expensive country. And then another question coming through. I know that you guys are trying to get some shares in the boat. What's that about? Can you tell us more? Before we bought the lifeboat, I was doing construction work in northern Haiti, and wanted to try and raise some money for them in the work that we were doing. We're fairly confident that when we sell the lifeboat, we'll sell it for more than the money we put into it originally. And so the idea with the shares is that people bought a proportion of the cost of the conversion, and then when we sell the lifeboat, they get their money back, and then any profit made on that should go to the work of Hope Health Action in Haiti. We hope, and it looks like we're probably going to raise around £10,000. So that's wasn't really the focus of the trip, but it was a nice thing to do on the side, and a good way to help make the conversion possible for us financially. Unfortunately, working as freelancers wasn't quite enough to fully pay for the conversion, so we had to come up with some creative ways of raising some money. So have you managed to work while you were traveling on the boat? Yeah, I mean, I continued almost fully throughout the whole journey. Obviously, I did kind of reduce the amount of work that I was taking on, but considering we'd put so much of our earnings and savings into the boat conversion in the first place, by the time we'd left in May 2019, we were, well, I especially was kind of looking for where I was going to get the next money from to be able to pay for food, for fuel, for berthing fees.
So I had to take on a certain amount of work, but I did manage to kind of do it on a reduced schedule, and only when we were in port or we had inclement weather. So I didn't feel like we were kind of working and missing out on other opportunities. But it worked out all right, because Norway has such a good 4G network coverage. You're almost never outside of cellular service. So I was able to kind of send emails, send files off to process, at render farms and whatever else. So actually, if I wanted to work, I could. If I wanted to switch off totally, I also could. So it kind of worked out fairly well in the end for me.
Brilliant. There's another question coming in. I think we're probably going to have to wrap up because it's coming up to 6 o'clock. So where can people keep up to date with your adventure?
We're quite active on Facebook and Instagram, both under @ArcticLifeboat. We also have a YouTube page which has a series of short videos from the trip, and our website arctic-lifeboat.com. But Instagram is probably where we're most active and kind of document our life on board, and also where you can keep track of the release of the film later this year.
That's fantastic. And just one to close off with. I had one of your friends that was with you in Lofoten saying that it was like the best things was Dave being an expert fisherman, while Gaili was very good at making the fires. So I imagine you were making most of your food and fishing. It's quite the adventure.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I kind of miss a lot from it, and that was being able to fish for your own food, going straight from sea to plate. It was something that I'd never tried before. I'd never fished, but excuse the pun, like I was hooked after a couple of goes, and when you bring up 4 individual mackerel on a line, and that's going to be turned into ceviche, or you're going to fry it up for breakfast next morning, there's a certain kind of satisfaction to it that you don't really get from buying food in a store and then cooking it. It was a very much like part of the way of life that we kind of adopted as we reach Norway, and it's something that I'm kind of missing out on at the moment. I don't know when we're gonna whether we're gonna try and get back into it over the summer, but anything's possible.
You could have a whole separate interview, Andrea, just with Dave talking about fishing.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. We'll have to schedule that in. Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. There's a few more questions. If anyone else has any other questions or comments, we'll pick them up in an email and we'll send them to the guys. So we'll try and reply to everyone. But this is the time slot that we had. We hope you enjoyed it, and thank you very much for joining. We've had quite a wide audience from all over the world, so thank you very much for this.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.